This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
ECOWAS sends regional military chiefs to Burkina Faso following Monday's coup. France's defense minister says the country won't stay in Mali if the price is too high. And Somalia reaches out to the diaspora as it raises funds for famine response. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up. In sports, Burkina Faso faced Tunisia in the second Africa Cup of Nations quarter-final in Cameroon. Welcome to the program. We begin the hour in Burkina Faso, where a committee of West African chiefs of defense staff has arrived in the capital, Ouagadougou. Regional bloc ECOWAS has sent the team on a fact-finding mission a day after it suspended the country following a military coup. The defense chiefs are expected to hold consultations with junta leaders and carry out an assessment of the security situation in the country. They will then submit a report to be reviewed by regional heads of state. Well, let's see how some Burkinabes are feeling about the visit from the ECOWAS delegation and the country's suspension from the regional bloc.
In regards to ECOWAS, every day we were suffering, we were dying from attacks every day. So if an ECOWAS suspension means we regain peace and security, that's fine with us. We are not interested in this so-called civil military delegation because if ECOWAS had a military force, why didn't they come and liberate Mali and Burkina Faso?
I would like to add that ECOWAS should not bother itself. We will take the sanctions already imposed on Mali, photocopy them and drop them off here in Burkina Faso ourselves, because we have been living under conditions similar to those sanctions since 2015. Whether ECOWAS comes or not, we are determined to accompany the Lieutenant Colonel Paul Damiba for the total liberation of our country.
Whether ECOWAS is there or not, we remain firm and engaged. In order to guarantee our sovereignty on the national and international stage, we will support our various social movements as well as those now in power.
Well, earlier we spoke to Ndu Nwokolo, managing partner and chief executive at the consulting firm Next Year Security, Peace and Development. He explained why he thinks ECOWAS has yet to impose sanctions on Burkina Faso or the members of the military junta.
First, I think they're trying to be strategic. They are trying to look at, can we discuss with them? Can we have a transition plan? If you look at what has happened in Guinea, Guinea has not even given a timetable. Mali that said it will be next month has gone back to say it's 4 years after. So can we have an agreement with Burkina Faso where we can have a transition program? Now, the issue is that the political leadership in most of these African countries have really failed them. You can't continue to rely on France to solve your problem. So what ECOWAS is looking at, where France cannot solve the problem of these Francophone African countries, what is it that we can do? So invariably, ECOWAS is trying to find a solution. However, it is important for some people to think, okay, is ECOWAS trying to muster a military attack, a military solution to the problem? No, ECOWAS does not even have the strength. Nigeria, which is the hegemony in the region, is struggling. So who will Nigeria send? So it's important that they start finding a solution to the issue. I think what they're trying to do is to look at it strategically, look at it militarily, but not intending to go all out to have a military solution, but see if there can be a political solution to solving the problem.
European states combating Islamist militants in Mali will try to find a way to keep their mission going, but there are limits to the price that France is prepared to pay to remain there. That is, according to French Defense Minister Florence Parly. Parly says the ministers involved in the European Special Force are united in wanting to maintain the mission and must determine its new conditions. Relations between Mali's military junta and its international partners are close to breaking down after it failed to organize an election following 2 military coups.
We observe that the conditions of our intervention, whether military, economic or political, have become harder and harder to manage. In short, we are not prepared to pay an unlimited price to remain in Mali. I spent a lot of time speaking with the European partners, having discussions to identify what the best path is for us. All we want is to pursue this fight. We are united in this goal, and we must now determine these new conditions.
Now, a new food security assessment released by the United Nations World Food Programme shows that almost 40% of people in Ethiopia's Tigray region are suffering an extreme lack of food. The area has been hit hard by the 15-month Ethiopian conflict. CGTN's Asta Tal has that report.
More than 9 million people in northern Ethiopia are in need of humanitarian food assistance. Families are exhausting all means to feed themselves due to the scarcity of food items.
Because of the food shortage, we feed our children first, and if there's anything left, we then can eat. Otherwise, we go to sleep on an empty stomach. Even though I am pregnant, I never have a full meal.
The World Food Programme estimates that on average, crisis-affected families in northern Ethiopia have been getting less than 30% of their caloric needs in the past months. The body, however, says constant humanitarian food assistance will be required at least throughout 2022. But none of the body's convoys have been able to reach Tigray since mid-December due to fighting and insecurity.
The conflict continues to drive hunger more and more. We have a few million people in Tigray in a very dire situation, hundreds of thousands of very malnourished kids in Afar. In Amhara, the situation is not getting better. In total, well over 9 million people that have no access to food at the moment.
The WFP's Northern Ethiopia response urgently requires $337 million to deliver assistance over the next 6 months. The WFP will reportedly begin running out of the capacity to purchase food from February. Asta Tal, CGTN.
Further afield, Russia's defense ministry has released footage of its soldiers arriving in Belarus for joint military exercises. It says the drills are aimed at practicing coordinating allied forces. It comes amid heightened tensions over Russia's military buildup near the border with Ukraine. The West has warned about a possible Russian aggression against Ukraine, but Moscow denies any plans for an attack. The US and its allies have warned Russia with economic sanctions if it invades its neighbor. NATO also says the Western military alliance is watching closely as Russia moves troops and arms into Belarus for drills. Well, our correspondents Natalie Carney and Alyosa Milenkovic have the details from the region.
Rather calm and relaxed. We're actually at the main train station here in Kiev, and as you can see, there's not much action taking place. That being said, it is relatively early on a Saturday morning. But this does follow a press conference held by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in which he essentially accused the West of sort of over-sensationalizing the potential of war, saying that that could cost Ukrainians dearly. We don't need the panic, which could further cripple the economy here in Ukraine. There are no tanks on the streets, he says, and he doesn't consider the situation any more tense than he has over the last 8 years. Don't forget, this has been going on for the last 8 years. So the Ukrainians are very much used to the sort of ebb and flow of tensions happening in the east of the country. That is to say, though, that Volodymyr Zelensky also highlighted that that does not mean there isn't a potential for a possibility of escalation in this circumstance.
I'm in the city of Prokhorovka, but let's just go a little bit into history to explain why am I here. This is the place where the largest tank battle in the history of humankind happened back in 1943. Over 2 million people actually fought right here where I'm standing. Over 1 million casualties on both sides. So the people here in this area, in this region, are really afraid to see maybe repeat of the similar horrors of the war, and that fear is really hovering in this area. While coming here from the town of Belgorod, we came across several, I think I counted 5 or 6, huge Kamaz vehicles which were carrying what I think I recognize, the Pantsir S1. This is a very sophisticated state-of-the-art anti-aircraft system which Russia apparently deployed in this area. We also heard earlier this morning is that Russia called reservists in the area of Rostov. This is also at the border with Ukraine, and it is a little bit south from here. And of course, in the announcement of that, in the call to that reservist, Russian military stated that they will have to perform live firing military drills. So apparently the tensions around here are still far from over.
Let's take you back to our top story this hour. A committee of West African Chiefs of Defense Staff has arrived in the capital, Ouagadougou. This a day after ECOWAS suspended Burkina Faso from the bloc. Desiree Cannon has more details now.
ECOWAS delegation arrives in Burkina Faso at a time when the new military regime continues its consultation with the various socio-political strata to achieve an inclusive management of the transition period. The former regime in power and the Burkinabe political opposition all affirm their readiness to accompany the military in their effort to end the crisis in their country. The priority of people here is the restoration of security and territorial integrity. This means that people are ready to give the military the necessary time to build a stable state. Now, it remains to be seen whether ECOWAS will be in line with the wishes of the people of Burkina Faso. Desiree Cannon, CGTN, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Well, we're taking a short break here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up on the program. South African universities to introduce mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations, but some students won't hear of it. Welcome back. Now, the Somali private sector has convened a famine response task force to respond to the calls by the government to provide life-saving assistance to over 4.6 million people affected by drought. Mohamed Kahie has the details from the capital, Mogadishu.
This camp for the internally displaced in the outskirts of Beledweyne town in Hiran region is home to 400 newly arrived families affected by the ongoing drought in Somalia. Hinda Ahmed is a mother of 10 children living among the displaced people. She is appealing for help from fellow citizens to rebuild her life.
Life in the camp is very hard. No water, no food, no shelter, and no latrines. We depend on other people. We are appealing to our brothers to provide assistance to the displaced people here in this camp.
The Somali business community convened a famine response task force in order to take part in the ongoing efforts to provide humanitarian assistance to people like Hinda. Their efforts are already bearing fruits, with over $2 million pledged for the program.
We formed a Somali National Emergency Committee, which brings together the business community and the religious leaders. So this committee will be a permanent committee, which the aim is to respond whenever crisis happen in Somalia. The committee has already had the pledge of $2 million from the business community here in Mogadishu. And now we are in the process of bringing together the $2 million to deliver aid to those affected by the drought.
The Somali National Emergency Committee says it's reaching out to the country's diaspora community to support the ongoing efforts to provide relief to the most affected people.
Somali diaspora, they've been a backbone whenever crisis happened in Somalia for the last decades and so. And now also we have reached to the Somali diaspora, and some of them, they have already contacted us and already have started sending money to be part of this responding to the crisis. And we are hoping that more Somali diaspora also will contribute in these efforts.
The international observers say the drought in Somalia has led to the driest conditions seen in the country in 40 years.
Somalia is currently experiencing a 2-year drought, affecting mostly the south and central parts, expected to weaken the agricultural production by 60%, threatening the country's food security. Mohamed Kahi, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, a standoff is brewing between universities and student associations in South Africa. On the 1st of March, students and staff who will not have been vaccinated by then could be denied access to several campuses around the country. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced last December that the country was considering making getting vaccines a requirement. No decision has been taken on that yet, but universities and companies are already making the jabs mandatory. CGTN's Julie Shire with that report.
Sebolenkosi Kumalo is the president of the Student Representative Council at Wits University, one of the institutions set to soon implement compulsory vaccinations for staff and students. Kumalo's not opposed to vaccinations, but believes no one should be coerced into it.
The issue here is forcing people, mandating it. And this is against the background of our country, where we're coming from. For so many years, whether be it institutions of higher learning, we had the apartheid government that denied people specific basic rights, that forced people to live in specific conditions. The very same freedoms we fought for are now being taken away.
Institutions of higher learning are spaces where are inherent the spaces of debate. There are spaces where we believe that there should be intellectual engagement and discourse using science and facts to persuade each other, not to use draconian measures and such as mandates.
Contact learning and campus life was severely disrupted by South Africa's 2-year lockdown. Universities tried to accommodate students with devices and data, but it proved difficult for townships and rural areas.
We had so many students that struggled because not everyone had even devices, not everyone had access to a cell phone, not everyone could afford to buy data.
Universities are eager to restore their programs with minimal risk.
We took this decision really based on the science that vaccines really work. For those people who are choosing not to be vaccinated, we have a process called reasonable accommodation. So they can apply to the university to come onto campus without being vaccinated. And if they are granted reasonable accommodation, they will then have to undergo a test every week, an antigen test, to prove that they are virus-free.
Wits is not anticipating high numbers of unvaccinated individuals, but those who are may face an uphill battle.
And the next steps are looking at if you can't come onto campus, then you may have to deregister, or we may have to look at certainly in terms of staff, at sort of some kind of managed exit strategy.
More than 2/3 of South Africans are still unvaccinated as the government mulls whether to make jabs compulsory. Mandatory policies by universities are expected to cause a stir if large numbers of students are denied access to campuses. Julie Shire, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, as the Chinese Lunar New Year of the Tiger draws near, the Minister of Green Economy and Environment in Zambia, Collins Nzovu, has extended his best wishes to the Chinese people. Let's listen in on what he has to say.
The Year of the Tiger is really very, very important to China because they associate the agility of a tiger, the strength of a tiger, the wisdom of a tiger, the speed with which tigers hunt. So in the year of the tiger, the Chinese people want to ensure that they are a global leader in the world in terms of economy, in terms of putting its people out of poverty, in terms of ensuring that they're a global leader in greening the environment, in greening the economy. So we wish China the very best in 2022, the year of the tiger, and we are sure that China will achieve all its targets as it take care of the people. We wish the Communist Party, led by Xi Jinping, the best of 2022 and many more years to come.
And here's what's coming up in the sport. Burkina Faso faced Tunisia in the second Africa Cup of Nations quarter-final in Cameroon.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Well, we start in Cameroon, where Burkina Faso takes on Tunisia in the second quarter-final of the Africa Cup of Nations that kicks off in about 1.5 hours' time. Fresh off the back of eliminating tournament favourites Nigeria, Tunisia square off against the Stallions for a place in the semi-finals at the Rumde Adia Stadium in the first meeting between the sides since they met at this stage of the tournament in 2017. The Stallions claimed a comfortable 2-0 victory over the 2004 AFCON champions at the time before falling short to Egypt in the last four. Burkina Faso's AFCON journey has been a bumpy ride after finishing second to Cameroon in the group stage. Speaking ahead of the match, both sides paid respect to each other but exuded confidence that they will progress to face the winner of the tie between Senegal and Equatorial Guinea in the semi-final.
It is true we have had a difficult time in this championship, but this morning we had some good news from our camp regarding the return of some of the players and the team doctor, and especially the head coach Munde Al-Kaber, which is good for our morale. I am afraid in this group we hear more about positive and negative test results than the tactics of the game.
Staff medical, doctor. Yeah, we are all friends, I don't think there is really big difference between those two generations. It's true that right now we have a really young squad compared to before, but all these players are playing already in Europe. They know what is the high level competition, so they are ready to also contribute to the strength of the team. So I don't think we all in the team thinking the same way, and that's the only way we can have some victories.
And just to get you an update, in the first quarter-final, which is currently underway, the host nation Cameroon have 1 foot in the semi-finals. They lead their quarter-final against Gambia 2-0 thanks to a brace from Carl Toko Ekambi. Moving on, Kenya's Harambee Starlets' forthcoming 2022 Africa Women's Cup of Nations qualifier against Uganda is now shrouded in controversy. This is after Uganda's governing body FUFA claimed on Friday that their side has earned direct qualification to the July finals in Morocco at the expense of Kenya. However, on Saturday, the government-appointed FKF caretaker committee in Kenya denied the country has relinquished their ticket to Morocco, insisting the qualifier was still on. It has since emerged that the suspended FKF CEO Barry Otieno wrote a letter to CAF stating they would not organize the international fixture after their secretariat was suspended by the government last November. Kenya and Uganda are scheduled to face off in Kampala on the 17th of February before the return leg in Nairobi on the 23rd, with the winner booking their place in the Continental Women's Showpiece on aggregate. The Chinese ambassador to Tunisia and the country's Minister of Youth and Sports visited the construction site of the second Sports, Cultural and Youth Center funded by China in the North African nation. Officials also supported and celebrated the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympic Games that start next week. CGTN's Adnan Chawashi brings us this report.
This Benarus complex is located in the suburbs of the capital city Tunis. It will allow thousands of young people, including athletes and students, to practice sports as well as many cultural activities. The Chinese-Tunisian project is welcomed by the authorities and the local population.
This complex is gigantic. It's a center for sports, youth and cultural activities. It also includes an archaeological site. This achievement is the fruit of a successful partnership with our Chinese friends.
This center will revive the sports and cultural life in the southern suburbs of the capital city, Tunis. This place will gather people from all walks of life and offer the best services for Tunisian youths.
The Chinese ambassador to Tunisia declared that China aims to develop similar projects throughout the country.
This is the second youth and sports center built by China in Tunisia. This new center in Benarus is very sophisticated. I hope that there will be more projects of this type in other regions with the help of the Chinese government here in Tunisia.
Tunisian and Chinese officials welcomed China's successful preparation for the Winter Olympics. The Chinese ambassador noted that the construction of all the venues and supporting infrastructure of the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympic Games was completed on time. Moreover, China will ensure that the Games take place successfully and safely.
We will take on the challenge of organizing the Winter Olympic Games. The world is in the midst of a pandemic and the spread of the Omicron wave, yet China has made all necessary efforts and put in place a series of sanitary measures to make the Winter Olympics a real success. This event will be very successful despite the pandemic.
The opening of the Beijing Winter Olympics will coincide with the Spring Festival on the Chinese lunar calendar. Tunisian fans will watch and support this event, which brings people together. Tunisian sports analysts assert that the world supports and looks forward to the Winter Olympic Games in China. Beijing will become the first city to host both the Summer and Winter Games. Adnan Chawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
And that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Do remember you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I'm Mahia Mutua. I'll be back in half an hour with Sports Scene. Bye-bye for now.